It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Lina Kenter. Your maiden name was Amato. And Lina, I had the great privilege and honor to hear your unbelievable story. It was a few years ago, and we gave that video to the Holocaust Museum in Dubai. Your testimony. So
I'm honored.
What is your reaction knowing that your testimony is in the...
Of all places to be in Dubai, that's really very special.
But that you were saved by a Muslim, it's a very
that's the
big...
whole issue. I was saved actually by a Muslim, the Turkish ambassador, and an Italian family, which is Catholics. So there were three religions involved.
And this was in Rhodes Island?
It was Rhodes Island. I'm Jewish, saved by Turkish consul. He was told by an Italian friend that this is what's happening to the Jewish community in Rhodes. So the Italian friend went to the Turkish consul and told him what was happening, how the Jewish community was being collected in this warehouse, or I can't remember what it was called, and said, there are quite a few here who are Turkish citizens, can you help them? So she was a Catholic, went to the Turkish consul, who was a Muslim, and he said, I will think about it, and the next day he decided to make a list. And he went to where all the Jewish people were there. He had a list of names of those who had Turkish protection. He called them out. The Nazis opened, the SS actually opened the gates, let them out, which was my mother and father. My granny didn't go there because she was Turkish, so she was under the Turkish protection already. My parents were not Turkish actually, they were Italians. So he still, that consul, had the bravery to put them on the list and to get us out of that concentration camp. So it's like a miracle really when you think about it.
And do you remember his name, the Turkish consul?
Well, I wasn't there. I was given to the Italian family, which adopted me, really adopted me, because afterwards they found in the archives an adoption certificate that was adopted by them. And they put the date 2 years before all this Holocaust problem started, just to show that was genuine. So, okay, what else can I say?
And do you remember the name of the Turkish ambassador?
Ulkumen, Selahattin Ulkumen. I can never forget that. He was an exceptional man, very brave, and of course, because he saved so many Jews, he lost his wife, you know that. I'm not sure exactly where this happened like that, because the Germans pinned bombs to the Turkish embassy because he saved the Jews. We're not quite sure, but the fact is that he lost his wife, who was heavily pregnant with a child. But she managed to give birth to this boy, but she died.
And I think
so he saved lots of people, but he lost his wife. And I heard now that he said, he was asked, how do you feel that you lost your wife because you saved some Jews from this Holocaust? And he said, well, if my wife was alive, she would still be proud of me that I didn't manage to save 43, I can't remember, 52 people, something like that. I lost my wife, but I managed to save some other souls. So that, for me, is an angel.
It is an angel.
You know, an angel, but then you think, why us? You know, so many thousands went and died there. And when I look back, I look at pictures and I see all the people have gone. They went to a concentration camp, they were killed there, and I'm alive. You know, what is it? Why, how come? Why some people got saved like that? So we're lucky. We knew Lucky because my granny was Turkish, that's why. You know, she didn't give up her passport. She insisted on staying Turkish, whereas my parents were Italian.
So because of that document,
Just because of that document,
saved.
that saved us, yeah. And like that, there were some other 42 people, I think there were, of the same position. I mean, some of them were already Italian, but they had a Turkish background. But he made the list. Imagine, you went inside there and called out the name, so. They opened the gates, they went out, my parents. But my father still remembers, and he was crying about it because he was a manager of a bank, director of a bank, big shops that belonged to the family. Not his family, my mother's whole family, but never mind, that's another story. And he still remembers some of the workers, some of the staff, getting on the knees.
You were mentioning about your father.
My father was a director of a bank and manager of some businesses belonging to the family. And he had lots of workers, of course, there in that place where all they were waiting for deportation. And when his name was called and my father and mother were about to go out, they opened the SS opened the doors, the gates, and they were going out. Some of the workers fell down in front of him, kneeling in front of him, begging, please save us, please save us. He never forgot that. He never kept on saying this. There was nothing he could do.
And they were all taken away, all
yes,
killed.
all taken away. They all died. Of course, didn't know just then what was going to happen. We couldn't have any news, but of course they knew they were going to concentration camp. But we didn't know about. At least I didn't, but I don't know what they knew. But they were going to be gassed and exterminated.
Sure, and your father always remembered it. Always, I'm sure.
He always remembered this, of course. Kept on saying
harrowing
that.
experience.
How he will never forget how sorry he was. But he couldn't help. He couldn't do anything. What could he do?
He was lucky himself to be taken out. You know?
Well,
Yeah, he
as
couldn't.
I said, the consul was there, read those names out, and they went. And what could you do?
And Lina, your mother did something very unique with the pianos.
Yes,
That is the most.
piano's there, you see.
Could you relate just a little bit what you did with the
about
pianos?
piano?
Yeah.
Well, the Germans were going around collecting pianos, anything that they thought was valuable. And they came knocking on our door. They wanted to collect a piano.
And what did
And
your mother do?
my mother said to them, I'm a teacher. How can you take the piano away? We had two pianos, a grand and an upright. So anyway, they decided to take the upright. And my mother said, okay, but you must give me a receipt. And they looked at her. Nobody ever asked for a receipt from the Germans. When is she going to see it again, you know? She kept that receipt. And after the war, she heard that that piano was at the governor's house. And so she took a receipt and off she went there. Meanwhile, Rhodes was taken over by the British at that time. So there was a British governor before the Greeks took over. So she goes there to the governor's house and looks around, and there is a piano. I said, please, this is my piano. I said, well, prove it. And showed the receipt. They just couldn't believe that she had a receipt from the Germans. She said they'd never seen anything like that. They looked at her in such a way, the governor, you know, what did you do? How did you manage to get a receipt, you know? And we got it back. And this piano traveled from Rhodes to Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and now it's here in Cape Town with me.
It's amazing.
It's Stanway, by the way.
And then the family that you were saved, the Christian family, do you have memories of?
I went to visit them. Well, they died. She had a baby. They had a baby already. It was about 8-9 months. I can't remember. When I went to stay with them, they gave me the baby to hold, to make me feel at home, you know.
And
so
how old were you at the time?
I was 8. So now, recently, we read a book by Bianca Soju, who was the lady who adopted me with her husband. She's written a book, From Rhodes to Tavolara. Tavolara is a place in Sardinia where they live, or they have a holiday place. So when I read that book, there's a chapter there about the deportation of the Jews of Rhodes and what she did, and about me. So it's all there. So when we read this, we realized that it was due to her that the consul acted like that, because he didn't know. He wasn't staying in the capital, you know, in Rhodes itself. Because of the bombs and so on, he went to a village nearby to have a bit more quiet. So obviously he didn't know much what was happening there, not sure. But Bianca went on a bicycle all the way to tell him. He said, "Do you know that the community's been rounded up? They're waiting deportation, and there's some Turkish citizens among there. What you going to do about it?" So only when I read this book, we realized that she was the one, although she was pregnant at that time, she went on the bicycle to tell the Mr. Ulkumen what was happening. Said, "Please, you're like God now. Can you do something to save some people?" He said, "I will think about it. I'll give you the answer tomorrow." So she rode back on a bicycle. She was about 6 months pregnant, I believe. And that's when the consul made that list of people that were Turkish. And then I heard that my granny called him out. And this Mr. Soju took my granny to see the consul to make sure that she was safe, because she was Turkish. Said, "No, not to worry, you're under my protection." And she said, "Well, what about my children?" And that's why he put them on the list, although they were Italian. So that's a miracle, isn't it? So that's how it happened. So that's how my parents were released. And I went back to them from the Sojus.
How long did you stay with the Sojus?
It was a matter of a few days, you know, I can't remember, a week maybe, I can't remember. But meanwhile, they were sending me to a priest in the church there nearby to learn how to make the sign of cross, how to pray, you know. So if they caught them, they would say, "Well, I'm not Jewish." I knew how to pray, I knew everything. So I was going every day to a church, to a priest, and the priest also knew about us, trying to help. And then we heard that the priest tried to marry some of the Jewish girls to soldiers so they wouldn't be taken away. But I'm not quite sure about who was this, but it was something like that about it. So anyway, my story is that when I read this book, my husband Harry said we must put them on Yad Vashem, but see whether they'll make them the righteous Gentiles after what they did. Because the Turkish ambassador was already there. So after much correspondence, they accepted. But of course they had died meanwhile. But the children are still living in Sardinia, in Cagliari. So when this happened, when Yad Vashem agreed to make them righteous Gentiles, there was a big ceremony there in Sardinia. So we all went there, the whole family, all of us, the grandchildren, everybody, all the children, we all went there. and made time for the children. There are 3 of them. And one of them, the baby that I held. We correspond all the time, we speak. She's like a sister to me.
It must have been very emotional when you went there and when
You
they
should
did
see the
ceremony.
picture when we arrived at the airport, and she's there waiting for me, crying. We all cried, you know. Can't believe. After how many years now? 60 years? No, more. 80 years. 80 years. Well, we went 4 years ago. It was 76 years.
And Lina, can I ask, in during the war, did you all stay together in Rhodes?
We stayed there with the bombs and everything. Had to run to the shelters. There was no doctors and so on. But in January 45, the Germans said there was starvation. The Germans said those Turkish people, those people who have Turkish passports, are free. They find their own means to go to Turkey. So in January, we found a boat to take us over to Turkey. But January's winter there, you know. And while crossing, you know the story, the boat sprang a leak and we were drowning. So that's another miracle. We had to throw all the luggage overboard, and I was crying, I don't know how to swim. And all of a sudden somebody saw a boat on the horizon, waved, screaming, shouting, they saw us. And they towed us all the way to Marmaris. That's the nearest port from Rhodes Island. So that's another miracle.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And did you landed up in
We ended
Turkey?
up in Marmaris until the end of the war. Then we went back to Rhodes Island. We spent 3 years there before we got our papers to go to Rhodesia, because my uncle was already there.
And it must have been very hard to be in Rhodes, knowing that the whole community had been decimated. It must have been incredibly
What could we
difficult.
do? I was a little girl. I was 8, 9, you know. I went to Greek school. I made Greek friends. I never sort of asked my parents, how do you feel? What's going on? You know, when you're a child, it doesn't, only now, I feel it now. You know, when I got older and I knew what happened, and then I see pictures of
Did your parents
my schoolmates, you know, we couldn't go to school. So there were 4 children and the teacher who had private lessons in a home. And 3 of them and the teacher perished at the Holocaust. So when I look at the picture, I said, Mommy, Mom's still alive.
And Lina, if I can ask you, what message do you impart to your children and grandchildren?
You know, it's very difficult to pass a message. You just say you got to tolerate everybody, you know, you got to love everybody, you must try to help everybody, mustn't persecute anybody because they're not like you, they don't look like you, they're different religions, they're different colors, you know. Everybody's human. And unfortunately, I'm still seeing horrible things happening now.
But Lina,
Human nature never learns.
But Lina, what's very nice is you developed a very close connection with the Turkish embassy here in South Africa.
She
and
was
the
wonderful
Turkish
to
ambassador.
me. She was wonderful. That's why she came. She brought this young man to make this video of me, and she kept in touch. And they showed it in Istanbul or Ankara, wherever the capital is, every year when it's January, when it's Holocaust Memorial Day. They were showing it then, because of the concert, really. But that's my story.
So Lina, I just want to thank you because I am so incredibly grateful to you.
You can open the
one minute. I just want to thank you, Lina. So Lina, I just want to mention, first of all, being family, my wife's family, But I'm so grateful that you gave me that interview, and we did it because
I'm grateful to you for asking me. And the more news like that are spread, the better.
Absolutely.
You know? I mean, we're all dying out soon. There'll be nobody to talk about it.
Maybe and this is what I want to wish you in good health and happiness.
Thank you.
And all of Hashem's.
Anything can happen, you know.
But Lina, I want to mention.
We lost 2 members here, you know, that died in the 90s, the 100s. So.
But Lina, I want to mention, I was in the Holocaust Museum in Johannesburg before the corona, and I met with the Turkish ambassador, and I mentioned Lina Amato, and she said, "Oh, she loves you." She said, "I love her."
She was such a lovely woman.
She really was, and so warm and very special.
Yes.
But
I'm listening now that she went back. The new one is not the same.
But Lina, I just want to mention as well, when we took your video to the Holocaust Museum in Dubai, and here they had, and I showed it to them, and they saw original footage from a survivor who was saved by a Muslim. They were so grateful. They were so incredibly grateful.
I see the connection.
And they couldn't stop thanking, and I still can't thank you. I can't thank you.
But the Yad Vashem that
sure. They have it all. They have it all there. They have and they show it, and they're very grateful. And I am so incredibly grateful to you, Lina, and you should just have mazel and bracha and admei v'esrim, and if we could show the pianos, because that is the most amazing.
And there is my mother's degree there when she graduated in music.
And that was from Rhodes. So this is no. This is the piano.